You're listening to the Telltale Podcast. Don't forget to check me out on all social media, on Patreon, on Teespring, and on Etsy. All links can be found on my website, telltaleatheist.com, or in the podcast's description. The next story I wanted to talk about is about a pretty touchy subject in the atheist community at this immediate moment. A lot of you guys, if you follow me on Twitter, then you'll know exactly what this is all about. It's the veganism situation in the atheist community. It is a mess at this moment. Let me give you guys just a quick heads up on this whole situation if you weren't on Twitter to see what happened. Cosmic Skeptic is a vegan. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably knew that. If you watch his channel, he talks about it, fairly often. And he's been taking a pretty hard stand on it lately. He's been kind of talking about it a lot on his channel, on Twitter, everywhere else. It's a pretty important subject to him. And it's gotten a lot of people up in arms. Now, I've talked to him myself privately, and he and I are on good terms. I think he's a good dude, really. I don't know that I completely agree with him on veganism entirely, and I'm going to get into my reasons for that in a minute. But from the looks of it, it sounds like I'm going to have him on my channel in the near future to discuss it. So we'll see where that goes. But for the moment, let me just get my feelings on veganism down and talk a little bit about a cult that's kind of forming at this moment. So this is kind of a heavy subject, as I'm sure a lot of you know, but we're going to have to talk about some tweets first. So let's take a look at some of the tweets that kind of followed from this discussion with Cosmic Skeptic. There were naturally some extreme people, as there are extreme people in every movement. There are extreme Christians, there are extreme atheists, there are extreme Jehovah's Witnesses and vegans, and every group has its kind of extreme sect, right? I'm sure we all recognize that. We have to recognize when our thinking is getting too extreme to avoid the extremes ourselves, right? I started engaging with Cosmic Skeptic a little bit on Twitter on this subject, and the extremists kind of appeared and made themselves known. So I figured we would take a look at a couple of these tweets from people who had some very, very extreme positions and some people providing propagandistic information. So let's take a look at this first tweet thread. I said, since this is relevant right now, my neighbor actually works at a slaughterhouse. He told me about it. He said it's not for everybody. Usually they hire somebody and they know within the first 2 hours if they're going to stay. Farmers bring the cows, pigs, whatever to the slaughterhouse. They take a gun and they shoot it right between the eyes. Lights out. Just like that. From there, they butcher it too. But the actual slaughter process is hopefully painless. Is it moral to do in the first place? And my tweet actually continued on to say, that's debatable, but at the very least, we should avoid or improve factory farming conditions. Factory farming maybe shouldn't even exist at all because of how cruel and disgusting it is. That was my continued tweet thread. So this person responded, and an important question I think you should ask yourself is, would you be willing to pull the trigger? If not, how could you ask someone else to commit an act out of your moral scope on your behalf? First of all, I wouldn't say it's out of my moral scope necessarily. I don't necessarily believe that it's immoral to do. I didn't say that I think it is or isn't moral. I have not taken a position really on whether or not it's moral to kill an animal. It's heavily dependent on the situation, first of all, but anyways, my response to him was, me personally, I could pull the trigger, yes. Do I want to? No. You keep misrepresenting my views. This is not the first interaction I've had with this person. I would love it if the world could be vegetarian, but many people just can't be. This thing will exist whether it should or not. We should make it as ethical as possible. The reason I say that it's going to exist whether we like it or not is because the vegan options for protein almost entirely have high levels of carbohydrates. There are almost no protein options that don't have high levels of carbohydrates. And do you know what carbohydrates turn into when they enter your body, they turn into sugars. Diabetics cannot consume high carbohydrate protein sources because it will drive their sugar up and kill them in many cases. This is not a fringe situation. This isn't like 0.5% of the population has this problem where they have to blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. This is like a pretty good portion of the population has to have a protein source that doesn't have carbohydrates in it. So one way or another, we're going to have meat available for the population, period. I know that that's not the ideal situation in your mind. I understand. But this industry has to exist or people will die. It is either people dying or animals dying, like large portions of people dying or animals dying. In response to that tweet, he said, I'm sure the same thing was said about slavery. Me, I couldn't pull the trigger. So he's saying that he's basically comparing this situation to slavery. He's saying that I'm like a middle-of-the-road person on slavery, basically, or I would have been a middle-of-the-road person on slavery. I understand the point that he's making, but that is just straight up an extremist position that he's taking. Let's do this. Let me look something up real quick. 10% of the population, of the U.S. population, has diabetes. 10% of the U.S. population, okay? Diabetes is not the only condition that prevents you from eating carbohydrate-filled protein sources. There are other situations. There are other cases in which you have to have protein from a carbohydrate-low protein source. So what do we do here? Like, are we going to let 10% of the population die or what? Like, what's the option? Like I said, I'm prepared to talk about this with Cosmic Skeptic in the near future. So my positions may very well change on this. In fact, they probably will change, honestly. But time will tell. Let's take a look at this other tweet thread and see what it says. Somebody said in response to my tweet thread about farmers bring the cows, pigs, or whatever to the slaughterhouse, they take a gun and shoot it right between the eyes, lights out, just like that. From there, they butcher it too. But the actual slaughter process is hopefully painless. Is it moral to do so in the first place? That's up for debate, but providing a good life for the creature beforehand should be an absolute minimum expectation either way. Factory farming is fucking wrong and should be done away with. In response to that, somebody said, my dad used to work for a slaughterhouse. He took me to see it when I was about 6. You're right when you say they shoot the animal between the eyes, so the animal doesn't feel any pain when it's slaughtered. The process is different for pigs. With pigs, they don't shoot anymore. Pigs tend to wake up in hot water as they remove its hair. The SPCA didn't approve, so the new method is using an electric current to stop the pig's heart. I can't speak to the conditions on animal farms. I actually looked this up. I said, do you have a citation for that? My neighbor says he kills pigs the same way as cows or anything else. If that's the case, then it should be stopped because it's unnecessary and inhumane. He said, I can't remember where I read about pigs, but Wikipedia has something on it. So I went and took a look at the Wikipedia article because, Wikipedia, I'm not going to count it out as a source automatically. They have citations on Wikipedia. So if the citation brings me to something valid, something useful, I'll use it. But I ended up going to the Wikipedia article and looking it up, reading about it. And the process that this person was describing was not the slaughter process. It was the butchering process. They shoot pigs between the eyes just the same as cows and every other thing out there. They just kill them just like that, and it's over. They do not let animals suffer on the vast majority of slaughterhouses, basically. Like I said before, I'm willing to talk about maybe this shouldn't exist. Maybe it shouldn't. I don't know. I'm still thinking it through, and like I said, I'm talking about it with Cosmic Skeptic pretty soon, and my position will almost certainly change on various different things. But this is propaganda. That's what this is. This is propaganda. This is exactly the same thing that you find Jehovah's Witnesses spreading. Now, this person may have done it unintentionally. Maybe they were just uninformed. Maybe somebody else spread that to them and they picked it up. I don't know. But it was propaganda. It was misinformation spread through a community with the intent to discourage certain behaviors or certain things. It's just wrong. It's incorrect. Like I said, I don't know if this person had bad intent or not. Probably not. They seem plenty honest to me. But yeah, there is actually a high level of propaganda going through this movement, the veganism movement. Now, on Twitter, I said this recently, and I'm prepared to back this up, and I'm also prepared to discuss it. Like I said 1,000 times by now, I'm not dead set on this issue. I'm willing to hear people out, willing to hear new positions, and willing to think about my position on this, rethink my position on this. But at this immediate moment, as I'm making this podcast episode, I view veganism as an extremist position versus vegetarianism. I want to see less meat consumed. I want to see better conditions in fact, I want to see factory farming done away with completely. Period. I don't want to see factory farming at all. But if I raise chickens myself and I take care of them well, am I morally in the wrong for using their eggs if they're well taken care of? Am I doing something really terrible by using the eggs that they're getting rid of? Unfertilized eggs just sitting there. Is it wrong? Is it wrong for me to raise a cow and use its milk if it's well taken care of? The problem with veganism is the default position is no. It's not okay, period. Whether it's well taken care of or not. In some cases, you shouldn't be feeding your pets carnivorous diets like your cats and your dogs. And a lot of extreme positions. There's no black and white. There's no nuance in the conversation at all. And there should always be nuance in conversations. The moment you take an absolutist black and white position on something is the moment that you've lost. I'm taking an absolutist position on that. So I wanted to take a look at this this interesting article by the New York Post. It's called "The Cult Leader Behind the World's Fastest Growing Vegan Chain." I just want to say up front that this woman here is not a representation of the vegan community. I have a lot of vegan friends. In fact, there's somebody on Twitter and on my Discord and who's in a lot of my live streams, Evan Inge, aka Nucleomaniac, I think. Honestly seems like an awesome dude. Seriously. Does super chats every now and then and things like that. Genuinely awesome dude to me. And he's a vegan. Being a vegan does not mean that you are a cult member. I don't want anybody to think that that's what I'm saying. I don't want to conflate this cult leader who owns this vegan chain. I don't want to say that she's the leader for all vegans or something like that. I recognize that there are plenty of vegans out there who are 100% legit, really cool people in my book, and are honestly trying to do the best that they can for the environment, for animals, and things like that. So don't think I have anything against vegans. I don't. Absolutely not. But let's give this a read and see what this woman is all about. A female spiritual leader who claims to be a divinely chosen supreme master of 2 million followers is behind the world's fastest growing vegan restaurant chain. Loving Hut, which has 38 locations in 14 U.S. states, is the catering arm of the mysterious Supreme Master Ching Hai. The now 67-year-old platinum blonde multimillionairess, is that a word? Multimillionairess? Who goes by the name Celestia de l'Amour in America, runs a worldwide spiritual organization which promotes concepts such as master power and time travel. Ching Hai has a monogrammed clothing and merchandise line, sells her own paintings and vegan fur couture. Okay. She also owns a television network and has staged a musical in Hollywood based on her poetry. Pretty big platform then. This woman seems like she's got a lot of money and and a lot of assets and a big platform that people are listening to. Hi's movement was described as a cult in Time magazine after she donated $400,000 to then President Bill Clinton in the late 1990s. Fascinating. Okay, this is the first I've heard of this woman, really, mostly. I find it really strange that they linked a political donation to a presidential candidate to being a cult leader. Let's just continue reading. HumaneWatch.org said Hi inspires feverish adoration like a kind of deity and travels in limousines to attend to her adoring faithful. But according to one of her spiritual empire's websites, Hi selflessly circles the globe to give the gift all free of charge of enlightenment. Her global loving hut chain has restaurants in the UK, Europe, United States, Russia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America. Her carefully constructed image includes a story of how she was chosen to lead the world with a number of mantras, including be vegan, make peace. Proprietors of Loving Hut franchise outlets in Australia told news.com.au they were Hi followers. Based on the Taiwanese capital of Taipei, where tens of thousands of followers donate to the master, Hi wears satin robes and elaborate headdresses. She travels the world delivering lectures on subjects such as breatharianism. Oh, that's fascinating. I need to cover this woman on my main channel, seriously. Love and inner awakening. I absolutely need to cover this on my main channel. However, there have been allegations of wrongdoing. The Taiwanese government has investigated Hi's organization for alleged fundraising improprieties, which include a transfer of $2 million outside the country. Oh, man. This sounds extremely fascinating, and I need to cover this more. So this woman sounds like a complete woke, hippie, new age nutcase, pretty much, to me. And the things that they described here do seem kind of cult-like, but I feel like the New York Post, the people who wrote this article, aren't really invested in cult research as much as me, for example. So they're pointing out things that seem really weird and kooky, but they're not really pointing out cult aspects to this, like shunning friends or family, discouraging outside sources of information, black and white thinking, things like that. The breatharian movement itself is really concerning, and I honestly should have covered it long ago. It's like a fascinating branch of pseudoscience. So who knows? Maybe I'll cover this in the future on my main channel after I've done some real heavy research on this group, but it seems fascinating. The point behind this entire segment is, 1, there is propaganda going around in favor of veganism. 2, I consider veganism versus vegetarianism to be an extremist, absolutist position. And 3, I'm open to having my mind changed on this issue, and that's what I hope to accomplish by talking to Cosmic Skeptic about it in the near future. So stay tuned for more information on it. Stay tuned to see how my mind changes, if it changes at all, and we will hopefully revisit this issue at some point soon.